Let us cast our minds back, far beyond the reach of human memory, to a time when our planet was a vastly different place. Imagine an Earth teeming with life, but not as we know it today. The continents were not in their familiar positions, and the oceans were warm, shallow, and sprawling. In these ancient seas, a vibrant and bustling world existed, almost entirely microscopic. Countless trillions of tiny organisms filled these waters. Phytoplankton, tiny plants, microscopic green jewels, zooplankton, tiny animals grazing on them, a colossal marine food web, a living soup across the globe, sunlight on water, a factory of life. Phytoplankton formed immense blooms, coloring seas for thousands of miles. They produced vast quantities of oxygen, the lungs of the world. Short lives, days or weeks, generation after generation, their brief existence began a geological process spanning epochs. The story of oil begins here, not with dinosaurs, but with the humblest of life forms. Over eons, this constant rain of organic matter created a vast carbon reservoir, a planetary savings account. Tiny daily deposits accumulated into concentrated energy that would one day power a completely new kind of world, a human world. Every life, no matter how small, eventually comes to an end. When they died, their journey was not over. It was merely entering its next crucial phase. Their tiny bodies, no longer buoyant, began a slow and silent descent, drifting down from the sunlit surface waters into the dark, cold abyss below. This was not a trickle, but a constant, gentle shower of organic matter, a phenomenon often referred to as marine snow. As these minuscule remains sank, they formed a cascade of nutrients for creatures living in the deeper, darker zones of the ocean. However, the sheer volume of this descending matter was so immense that much of it escaped being consumed. It continued its journey downwards, falling past strange deep-sea creatures and through crushing pressures, to finally settle upon the seabed. This process was most effective in specific environments, often in enclosed seas or basins where the water was stagnant and depleted of oxygen. In these anoxic conditions, the usual bacteria and scavengers that would break down organic material could not survive. This lack of oxygen was critically important. It acted as a preservative, preventing the complete decay of the tiny carcasses. The ocean floor is not a static place. Rivers continuously wash sediment from the continents into the sea. Currents carry sand. Currents carry mud. Slowly, inexorably, new layers of inorganic material began to settle on top of our organic-rich mud. At first, a light dusting, then a blanket, then a thick, heavy tomb. With burial comes immense pressure. Imagine a mountain's weight pressing down. Now imagine several miles of rock and sediment. This immense force squeezed the sediment, pressing the particles closer together and forcing out the water that was trapped between them. The loose, watery mud began to harden, compacting into a dense, solid rock. This newly formed rock, a dark, fine-grained sedimentary rock, is what geologists call shale. And locked within its fine matrix were the preserved remains of our ancient plankton. The burial took place over millions of years, as continents drifted, mountains rose and fell, and the seas advanced and retreated. A layer that was once at the bottom of the sea could, after 50 million years, 100 million years, find itself buried 3 miles, 4 miles, or even 5 miles beneath the surface. As the burial depth increased, another critical factor came into play: heat. The deeper you go into the earth, the hotter it gets, a phenomenon known as the geothermal gradient. This combination of ever-increasing pressure from the weight of the rocks above and the steadily rising heat from the Earth's interior created a unique geological pressure cooker. Deep within the Earth's crust, trapped inside the shale, our organic matter was now being subjected to the gentle but relentless forces of this subterranean kitchen. Under the influence of the rising heat and pressure, the large, complex organic molecules that made up the bodies of the plankton, fats, proteins, carbohydrates, began to break down. What remained was a waxy, solid substance, a complex mixture of organic compounds dispersed through the source rock. This intermediate material is known to geologists as kerogen. It is not yet oil, nor is it coal, but something in between. The shale, now rich with this solid kerogen, is what we call an oil shale. The fate of this kerogen depends entirely on what happens next. The key to the next step is temperature. There is a specific window of temperatures, known as the oil window, in which the magic truly happens. If the source rock remains too cool, buried at too shallow a depth, the kerogen will remain as it is and no oil will form. If, on the other hand, the rock is buried too deep and becomes too hot, the complex molecules will be broken down too far, forming only natural gas or even just graphite and carbon. But if the temperature is just right, typically between 60 and 160 degrees Celsius, the process of catagenesis begins. This is the thermal cracking of the large, heavy kerogen molecules into smaller, lighter and simpler liquid molecules and gas molecules. It is the geological equivalent of a refinery, but one that operates with breathtaking slowness over millions of years. The solid, waxy kerogen begins to sweat, expelling the much more mobile and fluid substances we recognize as crude oil and natural gas. The once solid organic matter born in the sunlit ocean is finally being reborn as a liquid deep within the earth. Expelled from the tight confines of the source rock, the droplets of oil and bubbles of gas now embark on an epic journey. This movement, known as primary migration, is the first step out of their geological nursery. The immense pressure that forced them out continues to be the driving force, squeezing them into any available crack, fissure, or more porous layer of rock nearby. They are now fugitives, seeking escape routes from the high-pressure environment of their creation towards areas of lower pressure, almost always upwards towards the Earth's surface. The oil and gas do not flow in great underground rivers. Instead, they move through microscopic pore spaces between grains of sedimentary rock. They follow the path of least resistance through permeable rock layers, carrier beds, sandstone reservoir, limestone reservoir. Impermeable layers can halt or divert them. Dense shales, salt beds, they may be forced sideways until another route up appears. If migration continues unimpeded, the oil and gas reach the Earth's surface. Natural oil seeps, tar pits, La Brea tar pits, California. For a vast accumulation of oil and gas to form, something must get in its way. The upward migration of hydrocarbons must be halted by a specific geological configuration known as a trap. One of the most common types is an anticline trap. This is where tectonic forces have bent the rock layers upwards into an arch or dome shape. Another common type is a fault trap. Faults are fractures in the Earth's crust where blocks of rock have moved relative to one another. Salt domes also form excellent traps, as the rising columns of salt pierce through and deform the surrounding rock layers, creating numerous pockets where oil and gas can become trapped. Once trapped, the oil and gas remain there, held in a geological prison. They are not in a great underground cavern or lake as is often imagined, but held within the microscopic pores of the rock itself, like water in a sponge. Here they can sit for millions of years, a finite and precious concentration of ancient sunlight, preserved deep within the earth. The search for these hidden traps is the work of petroleum geologists who act as detectives, piecing together clues to understand the world beneath our feet. The real revolution in oil exploration came with the development of seismic surveying. This technique allows us to see into the Earth's crust without drilling. It involves creating a powerful sound wave at the surface using a specialized truck with a vibrating plate on land or an air gun that releases a bubble of high-pressure air at sea. By analyzing these seismic data, geologists can create detailed three-dimensional maps of the subsurface, identifying the shapes of the rock layers and pinpointing potential traps. Even with the best seismic data, there is only one way to know for sure if oil is present: to drill an exploratory well. This is an expensive and risky undertaking. The moment of truth arrives when the drill penetrates the target reservoir. Will it be filled with oil and gas or just water? It is the ultimate geological gamble. When the drill bit strikes a successful reservoir, the immense pressure that has held the oil and gas captive for millions of years is finally released. This natural pressure often forces hydrocarbons up the well to the surface in a gushing fountain of black gold. This is the culmination of an incredible journey that began with sunlight and plankton in an ancient sea. That stored solar energy, concentrated and transformed by the Earth over hundreds of millions of years, has now been unlocked by human ingenuity, ready to power our modern world. The crude oil that emerges is a raw material of almost limitless potential. It is transported via pipelines, tankers, trains to vast refineries. There, through fractional distillation, it is heated and separated into its fractions: propane, butane, gasoline, jet fuel, diesel, heating oil, lubricating oils, waxes, asphalt. But the story doesn't end with fuel. The hydrocarbons from oil and gas are the fundamental building blocks for the petrochemical industry. They are used to create an astonishing array of products that define modern life: computers, phones, packaging, nylon, polyester, fertilizers, medicines, detergents, cosmetics, and so the cycle is complete. The energy captured from the sun by microscopic plants hundreds of millions of years ago has journeyed through time, buried and transformed into a concentrated liquid power source. We, in our brief moment on this planet, have learned how to find it, extract it, and use it to build our entire civilization. The light that shines in our cities, the power that drives our industries, and the speed that connects our world are all, in essence, a form of buried sunshine. It is a remarkable inheritance from a deep and distant past, a secret story written in the rocks of our planet.